Well, it looks like I've made it this far into the day and night without crossing any wires or running into too much criticism. How was it with you? Were you pretty well on target today? Or did you happen to find a certain thing that may have occurred that caused some criticism? Well, I welcome you to Nightsounds. I'm Bill Pearce. And I guess we'll have to start with the premise none of us is perfect, but sometimes one day's better than another. I heard of a little gal who loved her mom so much she wanted to do something really nice for her. So before they went to church on a Sunday morning in the wintertime in an old-fashioned farmhouse, she put her mother's shoes by the old pot-bellied stove to warm them up. Well, she put them a little too close, and by the time her mom got down, they were in charred ruins. The little girl was not faultless, but she was blameless because of her intent. I heard of another funny one. The children were lined up in the cafeteria of a Catholic school for lunch. At the head of the table was a large pile of apples. Well, the nun made a note that said, "Take only one. God is watching." Well, moving through the line to the other end of the table was a large pile of chocolate chip cookies, and a little boy wrote a note over them, saying, "Take all you want. God is watching the apples." Tonight, we are here, and I've entitled our time together, Say Nothing, Do Nothing, Be Nothing. That's a good way to stay out of trouble. And also, it's a good way to avoid criticism. But who wants to be that way? Say nothing, do nothing, be nothing? I'll give you 3 guesses as to what our title is tonight. First, let's hear the music. The Cathedrals Quartet with this very purposeful statement.
I'd like to say it again. Jesus' blood has cleansed me from sin. I know it's been said many times before, but I'd like to say it again. I'd like to say it again. Jesus' blood has cleansed me from sin. I know it's been said many times before, but I'd like to say it again. It's been talked about and it's been sung about down through history. There's power in the blood of the Lamb who died to set men free. The greatest story that's ever been told, God's great gift to man. I've been washed in this precious blood, and I want to say it again. I'd like to say it again. Jesus' blood has cleansed me from sin. I know it's been said many times before, but I'd like to say it again. I'd like to say it again. Jesus' blood has cleansed me from sin. I know it's been said many times before, but I'd like to say it again. There's a healing balm in Gilead. Oh, and it's the crimson flow. It is the crimson flow. Coming down from Calvary. Coming down from Calvary. Washes white as snow. Washes whiter than snow. Sinner, if you'll come to the Lord. Sinner, if you will come. He will save you from sin. He will save you from sin. It'll bring you joy like you've never known. It will bring you joy like you've never known. And you'll want to say it again. You'll want to say it again. I'd like to say it again. Jesus' blood has cleansed me from sin. I know it's been said many times before, but I'd like to say it again. I'd like to say it again. Jesus' blood has cleansed me from sin. I know it's been said many times before, but I'd like to say it again. I know it's been said many times before, but but I'd like to say it again. I'd like to say it again. I'd like to say it. I'd like to say it again.
One of the finest quartets that ever graced a studio, the Cathedrals, opening our program tonight with the title Say Nothing, Do Nothing, Be Nothing. The subject matter is dealing with criticism. Fear of criticism is a greater threat than the criticism itself. People who are intimidated by their critics live timid, hesitant, really invisible lives. Writer Elbert Hubbard said, "To avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing." Cowering in the face of criticism always produces a negative impact upon life in general. And one of life's challenging realities is the fact that there are always people around us who are fault-finders. Those who seldom see the great or the good, but are quick to point out the negative. During his presidency, Abraham Lincoln was a man greatly respected, greatly reviled also. Blamed for plunging the nation into war. He was the president people loved to hate. Those who opposed his views regarding the war and slavery, as well as his efforts to keep the nation united, were vocal and uninhibited in denouncing him. In fact, one day during the darkest days in the Civil War and of his presidency, it was said that Lincoln was walking down a street near the Capitol in Washington when an acquaintance caught up with him. As they walked, the man brought up the subject of the growing anti-Lincoln sentiments flowing in Washington, as well as throughout the country. And with brutal honesty, the man related to Lincoln many of these stories outlining attacks on Lincoln and his policies. As the man spoke, Lincoln remained completely silent, absorbed in his own thoughts. Well, finally, the exasperated man asked, "Mr. Lincoln, haven't you heard me? Are you listening to me?" Well, Lincoln stopped, looked directly at him and said, "Yes, I've heard you. But let me tell you a story. You know that during the time of the full moon, it's the habit of all the dogs to come out at night and bark and bark and bark at the moon. And this keeps on as long as the moon is clearly visible in the sky." At that point, Mr. Lincoln stopped speaking and continued his walk. Well, confused by Lincoln's response, his exasperated companion persisted. "Mr. Lincoln, you haven't finished your story. Tell me the rest of it." Well, once again, Lincoln stopped walking and said, "There's nothing more to tell. The moon keeps right on shining, no matter how many dogs are barking or how loudly." So once again, Lincoln was a great role model for managing criticism. And he certainly was aware of his shortcomings. He knew that many highly respected, influential people disagreed with him. In fact, one of the highest members of his cabinet said to a friend of his one time, "Abraham Lincoln is a fool." Well, somebody told Lincoln about that, and the president stopped and thought for a moment again, and he said, "Well, he must be right, because I respected that man and still do. He's a great statesman. I must be a fool." How many of us would get to that point? It takes a great person to admit his faults, even if he doesn't have them. Tonight's program, Say Nothing, Do Nothing, Be Nothing. I'd like to do something a little bit different now. I have 3 male soloists lined up to sing for us tonight. They are all as different as night and day from each other in style, approach to a song, personality, and overall musical production. But each is, in his own way, okay. He's viable. I'm going to begin with a certain kind of voice. It's a stentorian production of singing. It's more legitimate than we hear these days. His name is Rick Webb, a great baritone voice. And I want you to listen, if you will, tonight to just a portion of a song that he's singing at this point, speaking of Jesus who went to the cross, and others may have criticized him. Even his closest circle of fellowship didn't want him to go the way he was going. They didn't like the way things were going to end. And of course, Peter, his close disciple, was the most vocal and verbal of all of them. This style of singing we don't hear much anymore. But listen, if you will, to this straightforward, down-the-line style of vocal production.
There was no easier way for you. There was no easier thing you could do. The cost of my life was the cross and the grave. There was no easier way. There was no easier way. In the trials we grow strong, for the suffering song is the music of your victory. There is no easier way for me. There is no easier way to be free. I'll pick up my cross and I'll follow each day. There is no easier way. There is no easier way. There is no easier
The voice of Rick Webb, baritone. Well, I'm sure that type of singing would find a certain amount of displeasure and criticism these days. People would say it's too stiff, it's too loud, no interpretation, etc. And he probably would run into a certain amount of disdain or critical comment from those who perhaps are not acquainted with that style of singing. And tonight's program, Say Nothing, Do Nothing, Be Nothing, dealing with criticism, finds that many criticisms that come our way are unwarranted, unjustified. Some criticism is not mere fault-finding, but friendly advice. In his article on criticism, Pastor Victor Parachin said, "Train your heart, your mind, and your spirit to sift out critical remarks that are simple nonsense from those that contain wisdom." When asked about criticism frequently hurled at her, Eleanor Roosevelt replied, "Criticism makes very little dent upon me, unless I think there's some real justification and something should be done." So responding positively to the wisdom in a critical comment can make us better people as well as enhance a career or a ministry. There's valuable insight from criticism sometimes, but nobody enjoys it, do they? Even if the criticism is justified, even if it's right and Maybe the one accused realizes he or she may have stepped off center. They may thank the critic, but no one really enjoys being criticized. And certainly no one was more opposed than Jesus himself. He had his critics. Even the song that we played at the beginning of the program tonight by the Cathedrals Quartet, I Want to Say It Again, would find that message that they proclaim, that Jesus died for the sins of the world, unacceptable from their critics. But who of us wants to go through life plain vanilla? To say something, to be something, to do something means that we're going to be shot at from some direction. Tonight, as we're considering various styles of singing, Rick Webb, whose voice we just heard, could probably sing in the finest concert halls in the land, but he could never enter the environment that this next singer could and does with his style of singing. I'm going to introduce once again Kevin Rigg, a man who has great faith in God and can get into the Hells Angels camps, the maximum security wards of prisons, the logging camps where tough people usually reside and hang out. He'll take his black Harley and move right in and speak and sing fearlessly for Christ. But his style of singing, well, let's just listen for these few moments together.
1, 2, 3. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Sometimes in my life, when I lie awake at night, it make me tremble. It make me tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Sometimes in my life, when I lie awake at night, it make me tremble. It make me tremble. Yeah. When they laid on in the tomb. Were you there when they laid his body in the tomb? Sometimes in my life, when I lie awake at night, it makes me tremble.
It makes me tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? And Kevin Rigg, the soloist in blues fashion, goes on to finish the story as you're acquainted with it in the old spiritual. But in the interest of time tonight, we want to move on because this next soloist has a style all of his own also. This one sort of shoots down the middle and sings in his own style ballads, and sometimes he'll break in the middle of a solo and just start speaking But then again, he has his own style of transmission. Sort of a ballad kind of message. Here's Dave Boyer.
Calvary covers it all my past with its sin and every shame, all my guilt, my despair, Jesus took on him there, and Calvary covers it all. Sometimes when I pray to the Lord Jesus, say, God, does it cover the time when I hit my wife? Can you forgive me for laughing at my preacher father and even cursing you? The answer always comes back loud and clear. Far dearer than all that this world can impart is the message that comes to my heart. How that Jesus alone for my sin did atone. Blessed Calvary covers it all. Calvary covers it all my past with its sin and its shame, all my guilt and despair, Jesus took on him there, and Calvary covers it all. My guilt, my despair, Jesus took on him there, and Calvary covers it all.
Well, we've heard three different kinds of singing styles tonight, but all of them, each of them, finds an acceptance by someone and a certain amount of rejection from another, which proves once again that there's great diversity in the universe. God has made us all different, given us distinctive styles of speaking and singing and interacting one with another. Tonight's program with the title, Say Nothing, Do Nothing, Be Nothing. The subject, how to deal with criticism. Just taking a moment's break here. This is Nightsounds, in case you've been wondering and joined us in the past few minutes. We're on the air 5 nights a week in most areas on this radio station. I'm glad to have you there. We'll be leaving there in a few moments. But as we do, we want to leave something that you can hold in your hand and keep till we meet together again. In the form of compact discs, the music of Nightsounds. And of course, we always put as the number one ministry outreach prayer support. Perhaps you'd like a catalog on the various attendant ministries of this outreach. Our mailing address is Nightsounds, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189. The email address, nightsoundsradio@aol.com, and the website, you'll find us at nightsoundsradio.org. Writer and poetess Leona Choi said, "How can I say I have experienced the ocean when only my feet are wet? Sand between my toes, I slosh about in the shallows. Shallow is safe, Deep is dangerous. Oh, the false premise of humdrum humanity. I could miss the great everything by bartering it for little nothings, safe sedatives that chain me to the shore. Eroding, consuming my days, my years, risk-free, yes, but with phony guarantee, while I am lulled into insensitivity and deceptive security, with my feet only ankle-deep in the fathomless ocean of life. So tonight, whatever expression God has given you, do it with all your heart for the Lord. Maybe there are some rough edges that need to be smoothed off, but let's take it like saints should, okay? Tonight's program, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. Finally, when it comes to critics and criticisms, let's remember to follow the advice of Jesus. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. While this may seem impossible to do while we're reeling under undeserved criticism, Jesus' advice is sound. Praying for those who hurt you brings us inner calm, peace of mind, immediately and ultimately freedom from the pains of criticism. Well, I just want to take this moment to thank you for being there tonight, and let's be better people tomorrow. Do our very best, but we're not going to be perfect, of course not. Let's be ready to take criticism, learn from it. We get it here. Everyone does. But it's how we handle it that really is important. Our mailing address is Nightsounds, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189. Till next we meet, I hope you have a good day tomorrow. And may God bless you in a very special way and a peaceful, restful, criticism-free good night.